I'm very proud to present to you the full healing journey of YouTube chef Brian, who also developed chronic fatigue syndrome, long COVID, and who tried numerous very expensive treatments until he stumbled upon the release program. And in the release program, we look differently at chronic illnesses and symptoms, and we try to identify the root cause behind every single symptom in the hope to release it and feel better almost immediately. Let's dive fully into the story and let's start with how it all started for Brian. Enjoy.
I feel like my journey into chronic fatigue is pretty similar to a lot of people. I had a very type A personality and was very motivated to achieve as much as I could, worked constantly, and I kind of just built up over time the amount of work that I was doing, and my ability to push away stress just was unrivaled with people I know. So I started out as a restaurant chef or cook, and later was promoted to chef. I did that for about 10 years, and that's a stressful lifestyle where you work minimum 10-hour days, but the majority of the time that I was working at restaurants, I was working 12 to 13 hours. And then at the end of my career was a restaurant that I opened up with some other people, so I had ownership in it, and I was working 14-hour days, 6 days a week. And the lifestyle was just bad. And also a lot of alcohol consumption during that case. I mean, some part of it is like you're in your 20s. That kind of started to fall away because obviously that just doesn't work in the long term for most people, is drinking every single night. So I was like, I got to clean up my act. That kind of addiction is like replaced with other copes, like excessive exercise. Like I'm working like 12, 13-hour days, but like in between services, I'm like going for runs around the park that are like 5 or 6 miles, like 4 or 5 days a week. Just like extreme type behaviors. I got out of the restaurant industry, and for a couple of years, I had a more easy job, maybe about a year and a half. But during that whole time, for the most part, I was building my YouTube channel. So I kind of had 2 jobs because I had all this crazy workaholism. Whereas like if I have any free time, I need to invest it in something productive, like a lot of people who have chronic fatigue. So YouTube channel was growing on the side, and then eventually I was like, oh, I can make some money doing this. This isn't just a thing where the numbers go up and people like my videos. I can actually maybe turn this into a job. So then the foot goes down even harder on the accelerator. And my day job was pretty easy. So I remember just doing less and less of that and more YouTube. And then that grew luckily into a full-time gig. And around end of 2021, I went full-time on YouTube. But the under the weirdest or like most difficult circumstances for me to pay myself enough to have like, you don't want to just go full-time YouTube and make $40,000 a year. That's just like too risky, So to have an income, not that that's like a horrible income or whatever, if that's what people make, but it's there's no margin, you like, if I don't make 100% of the money I need, I'm screwed. So anyways, I was like, I need to make a lot more money so that I feel safe. So that required me to make 2 videos per week, which is my videos are just like really high labor. So I would spend about 30 hours per video. And so I'd work like 60 hours a week by myself. My wife was eventually working on the channel, but for a while it was just me. And it was just like a lot of pressure because all the way I was making money was through sponsorships and all of these. So for example, a brand like Athletic Greens would do a sponsor in the video. And anyways, a lot of pressure because there's deadlines for the videos. Athletic Greens wants the video to go live on a certain day. So you have to get it ready by the deadline. And a lot of it's self-imposed, but I was just grinding and grinding and grinding. And it was starting to feel quite stressful, but I kind of doubled down on all this coping. Like I'm like going to optimize my sleep so I can maximize my energy for productivity. I'm going to read all these books about how to be more productive so I can get more juice from the squeeze. And I was just exercising like crazy, like doing heavy hypertrophy lifts Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, like 4 days a week. And then I would do like these timed speed runs where I was trying to like get my VO2 max better. Like, cause I read some longevity book and I was like, this is very floating head textbook, 100% mind identified. just using the body as a basically like a transportation vehicle to get the head moved around the world. And then it was all building, just feeling quite stressed. Then my grandpa, one of my lifelong best friends, and my mom passed away in about a 6-month period. And that just like cracked me wide open. And shortly after my mom passed away, I just started experiencing symptoms. And it started as like really extreme brain fog that later on I would probably define as depersonalization or derealization, just feeling like completely detached from reality. And if your mind identified and your performance is the only thing you have, it's like my whole identity is built on my performance, you spiral quickly. And then that sort of like limbic brain feedback loop of like symptoms are scary. Like for me, I went from 0 to like knowing what other people have had with chronic fatigue. I was never a 10. I was never permanently bedbound for years at a time, but I went to my 10 in like a week, from no symptoms to I literally can't get off the couch, period, for hours at a time in a pretty short period of time.
You mentioned a lot, and you mentioned that you were this type A personality, which is, I think, to be considered normal nowadays in our society. So a lot of people, they don't really realize that sort of like stressful behavior, that always being on, that it is not very normal or healthy. When did you realize that you couldn't continue living like that? Was that because of the symptoms, or was that before already?
I don't really think I fully realized it until much later, until in a way that I was going to make a change. So the symptoms stop you and you're like, this isn't possible, but I want to get back to the version of me that can do all this work and make 2 videos a week and go, I'm like planning on running a marathon and I'm like, maybe an Ironman would be a good idea in the back of my, you know what I mean? Like, um, so it's like, I'm like, as soon as I figure out these symptoms, I'm going to go back to that guy. And that was probably for, um, I don't know, a year and a half, maybe longer. And during that time, you're trying to solve the problem the wrong way, which is seeing, not that there's no merit in this. For some people, I think maybe. For me, it ended up being no merit in the end, but it was going to see functional medicine doctors or traditional doctors. And most people who are down the road in this journey will have been in the same place where there's no molecule, no supplement, no crazy treatment that's going to help you. But you have to, for people who are very, very mind identified and let's say materialistic in the sense that they have no conception of the inner world or the subtle energies of the inner world, which comes through the release work and other, types of healing. They have no sense of that. So they're just like, I am a physical object in 3D space, so I'm going to treat it with molecules from the outside in. Yeah, and you learn the hard way that doesn't work. So I had to exhaust that modality or that approach fully before I could be like, well, what's left? And that's when it's like, actually, maybe module 1, module 2 in the release program are a lot about slowing down, being mindful of what kind of stress you're experiencing. And for me, that was like, I guess the old version has to die. It took a long time to get there though.
Yeah, I mean, what you're saying is basically mourning yourself. It's an ego death, and it can take years, right?
Yeah, it's extremely painful. And a lot of it too, in the early part, when you're experiencing symptoms, you don't know what they are, you're resisting the symptoms and you're resisting the signs that they're coming from because of the way you were. And it takes a long time for that resistance to go away. And you do grieve the loss of that person for sure. You have to become a totally new person, unfortunately, somebody who doesn't destroy themselves with work.
So when your symptoms started, how did you react to that? Did you push through, or because you said you were bedbound almost in a week? How did that happen?
Yeah. Well, I got really scared because the first symptom was extreme brain fog. And again, it was like I'm just completely derealized, depersonalized, just feeling like I'm a spectator in my own skin. And that's like a really terrifying feeling, especially if you've never done anything to cultivate a sense of body awareness or embodiment. If you're just a floating head, it's the worst possible feeling. So I was super scared, and I was just immediately day and night was looking on the internet for solutions. And yeah, it just accelerated super quickly because the amount of fear. And the fatigue came within about a week, 2 weeks of that. And I think that it was just extreme resistance because I had all this pressure, self-imposed pressure, but I had to make videos. I had to make 2 videos a week. And or maybe after my mom passed away, I was like, oh, this 8 or 9 videos a month is maybe a little bit much. I need to go back. So I went to 7 videos instead of 9 or 8. But it was still like 50, 60 hours of work, a week of work. So yeah, it was a lot of resistance, pure resistance, I would say, unfortunately.
Yeah, I completely understand. I think that almost everyone with chronic fatigue syndrome has a lot of self-imposed stress, but it's very hard to recognize that because it's so normalized. It's like society praises people that can do that.
Yeah, it's rewarded. It makes you feel good, especially if you're somebody who um, has a strong enough will. Like a lot of people, you notice that different personality types have different levels of the ability to push things forward. And if you're that type of person, you get a lot of praise and you're successful. The reason the YouTube channel grew to me being able to do it full time was because I was able to push. And I thought about it a lot. I think you can still be successful. I don't know if you can achieve the same levels of success, or at least let's just say success in a monetary numbers on a page getting larger over time success. It's just one metric, but it got me to being able to have this job in the first place. And so there's all this feedback that's telling you, good job. And you're like, I'm better. You wouldn't say it out loud, but there's some subconscious part of you that's like, I'm a better human because I can grind.
Yeah, I think that's painful, but it's true for me as well. I think for many others. But then like with that iron will means actually that you're very strong, stronger than almost everyone else, and then you get to pay the price with weakness. So that's painful.
Mm,
Tired,
yeah.
depersonalized.
So I'm reading this book right now about will, written by this author who developed a model of psychology called psychosynthesis, which is one of the first people to talk about transpersonal states in a Western psychological sense. A lot of Eastern religions, or like Buddhism, Hinduism, they're very familiar with transpersonal states, beyond the ego. But this guy was one of the first people to start categorizing it, him and Abraham Maslow. And he's like, there's different types of will. There's a strong will, which is a type that you use to grind. And then there's a skillful will, which is using psychic energy in the most intelligent way possible to achieve the goal the most holistically. And I'm like, oh, I haven't, like up until I started dealing with chronic fatigue, I had no skillful will. I only had one tool, which was to, run as fast as possible and push as hard as possible. But you learn later on that actually, if you can use a skillful will, meaning the energy, if you can direct it in a way that's efficient, you can get quite a lot done in a way that requires way less effort. And you're also part of a skillful will is alignment with values. And flow starts to become an amplifier instead of effort or pressure.
That's very nice. But let's take a step back and to what kind of things did you do and did you look for in the first few weeks of having symptoms?
Well, like long COVID is the first thing that comes up. Because you see CFS and you're like, that's not me. It takes a long time or at least for me, was a long time before I had to identify in that way. So I was like, I have long COVID. I have all these other sort of, wouldn't even know what you call them, spooky diseases that have no cure. I saw the fun. I had already, there were signs in my life that this was coming. This psychosomatic change was coming because I had other symptoms that weren't fatigue, but I was seeing a functional medicine doctor already for a few other things, and like some gut issues and skin issues. I had like really bad adult acne that, in hindsight, is probably like a repressed anger coming through in some way, or some other kind of wound that raises a base level of some kind of chemical in your body that produces more androgens. That's how it manifests. So I was already seeing a functional medicine doctor, and they were pretty quick to be like, I think it's long COVID. And they have a whole suite of treatments that they can offer that cost thousands of dollars. So yeah, a lot of Googling functional medicine doctors.
Sorry, what did you pick a treatment for thousands of dollars?
I did everything. So it starts with paying for the testing, which is $3,000-$4,000, and you get the test back, and of course they're all positive, all of them. You're positive for Epstein-Barr virus. You have mold. You have glyphosate. You have heavy metals. You have too much mercury. You have too much lead. And so the treatments were like, okay, come in 2 times a week for the Myers cocktail IV, and then glutathione. Okay, that doesn't work. Then let's do ozone, where they take your blood out, put ozone in it, and then put it back in. And then there's extreme ozone, where they just hook up a thing to either arm, and it circulates through this machine, and it pumps like 10,000 times more ozone than the original treatment. And it's supposed to sanitize your blood and have all these metabolic effects that are positive for your mitochondrial dysfunction. And that, like those sessions, I did 6 of them, and I think it was $10,000.
Wow, and did it work?
Of course not, dude. Uh, and honestly, it just causes crash after crash after crash. For I don't know why. If it's a psychological issue where you're like, I'm nervous. Somebody said that I could crash, so I'm going to crash. Or if there was actually this huge die off or something. No matter what, like it's not like a chill thing to do to your system. So
Yeah.
I don't know, but I would crash hard. I had all these Herxheimer reactions. I don't know if that's a familiar term for a lot of people, but it is for me. Like that's what I would call a crash, is a Herx, where you're just basically your immune
Yeah.
system gets turned on. And I've had probably 100 of those, and it just takes you out for days at a time.
Yeah, I had extreme Herxheimer reactions as well. The first thing that did was this diet to no longer eat carbs. I mean, I wasn't that rich to be able to afford the things that you did, but that like 1 month of no carbs out of the blue, I was completely devastated and exhausted just from
Mm,
that Herxheimer reaction. So after
yeah.
going that route, you were a little bit poorer. Then what?
Well, I didn't get the message. I did a functional medicine doctor locally in St. Louis, where I live, and then I found one on the internet, like on Instagram, podcast functional medicine doctor. And that was just a whole other level. Like that whole thing was another $15,000, maybe more. I probably spent 40,000, all my YouTube money, uh, on it. And that they had me on the carnivore diet as well. And the supplements were insane, like insanely expensive, $600-$700 of supplements per month. And, if you're in month 16 or 17 in this journey and nothing has changed and the symptoms have just gotten worse, you're like, okay, well, I'm open to other ideas. And luckily, one of the functional medicine doctors somewhere along the way recommended Joe Dispenza. And so that for me was a gateway. I couldn't have heard your message during the functional medicine phase. I wasn't there yet. I was still too much of a materialist and identifying with the flesh, let's say. um, in the way that you do. Like there's only the molecule of the miracle treatment is going to be the thing that saves me. Anything but feeling pain, which is ironic because like the symptoms are like actually way worse than feeling the emotions a lot of the time. the despair you feel from resistance is significantly more painful than feeling some of the traumas from the past. I've noticed, not 100% of the time, but most of the time. Anyways, yeah, so I started doing Joe Dispenza meditations, and that was a gateway. Like I said, it was a way to calm down the nervous system and get some positive emotion going that wasn't total doom and despair and like, what the hell is happening to me? And, it's essentially fancy brain retraining. People are going to be really hot about that take, but that's how I feel. I think there's maybe some benefit to it. Um, it's better than nothing, and people have genuine healing experiences. At least for me at this phase in my life, it's not the type of healing I want to be doing. I want to be doing something a little bit different and more embodied. But it helped me. I did Joe Dispenza meditations every day for like a year.
A year.
Yeah, I did. I
Oh,
mean, I'm an
wow.
extreme person, so I'm like, okay, people say they heal. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it 2 times a day. I was doing 2 hours of Joe Dispenza meditations pretty much every day.
Wow. And did it do anything?
It took me from, let's say, uh, the whole functional medicine phase. I didn't get any better. There was like little moments here and there. Anytime there's a new treatment, you get the placebo for a while of like, this is gonna work, and it raises your spirits. But I didn't feel any different. I was still super derealized and detached and dissociated and full of resistance to, I mean, 100% of just like, I can't feel this way. And I had just fatigue. I mean, like, yeah, when I started doing the Dispenza meditations, I wouldn't crash as much. I still had crashes, but I wouldn't crash as much. Just I think that just the overall baseline chemistry of my body was a little bit more, I wasn't in freeze or fight or flight 100% of the time. There would be a couple hour windows where I'm getting some higher vibes going, and that helped. I probably went from, if I, at my worst I was probably like a 3 out of 10. I probably got up to like a 5 out of 10 with the Dispenza stuff. But you would just go back down to a 3 if you stopped doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's constant because it's a constant effort to calm your nervous system down when you're actually very stressed. And it's not really dealing with this with the root issue, I think.
Yeah, 100% agree. It's clear once you do any of the work in the program, uh, that that's not a robust strategy. Again, I think it works for some people who continue to do it over the long term, but I don't think you're gonna clear the empty the bucket that much.
Yeah. So when did you after how much time did you stumble upon release?
It was probably a year and a half.
After the Joe Dispenza
Um,
meditation.
oh no, a year and a half after getting symptoms. Like I started Joe Dispenza maybe 6 to 8 months after I started getting symptoms, and then did it for almost a whole year, maybe longer. And then I was doing Joe Dispenza in the beginning of the program. And this time I was saying a little bit after I went through the first initial 3 or 4 month period. I would do it intermittently, but it kind of just fell away as like, this seems really actually the second I started doing actual release work, that the Joe Dispenza work was just replaced with that. So maybe midway through the program or towards the end of the program, when the release work gets a little bit more serious and a little bit more, the results start coming.
Yeah. So what did you think of the work of the release work when you first stumbled upon it?
I think for most people, I've heard some of the other stories on your channel, and I think my experience was the very similar, which is that it just right away you're like, oh, this makes total sense. I have not been going about this the right way. And I found you through Raylan's podcast. So um I was like, well, what he's saying feels like exactly what I need to hear. And I listen to some of your podcasts and stuff to be like, is what I think he's saying, does it, fleshing out the idea a bit more? And within a week or so, I was like, I'm just going to sign up for his program because obviously that's the next step for me.
Great. And you mentioned that in the second part, after you started releasing, you could replace the Joe Dispenza meditation. And what were the results at that part of the program?
Well, it's well, the first part, I would say is underrated. Before I talk about the second part, I'd say the first part of the program is extremely underrated because that's where a lot of you'll find that if you're not continuing the work of the first part, symptoms will just come back, or at least when material from the unconscious raises up, a couple of things can happen. You can just be like, I'm going to process that as it comes up, or if I'm kind of sliding back into my stressful ways, the stress bucket's going to fill again, and I will get symptoms until I deal directly with it, if that makes sense. It takes a long time, or at least for me, to fully transition into this person who isn't pushing themselves. My default is to go back there. And there's been a few cycles of that. And it's never, each time it's less. But the lessons of the first part, which is really to pay attention to your stress levels, ask yourself serious questions about what do you do with your time? How do you spend your time? Are you constantly going through from stimulus to stimulus? And is the pressure in your life building? And what kind of presence are you bringing? Uh, yeah, it's going to be a harder road. So anyways, the first part was really valuable for me, and it continues to be. And I'm in a cycle now where I'm needing to slow down again because some symptoms started coming back. Nothing crazy, but enough to be like looking at the lifestyle. But then in the second part, when you get into the release work, it takes a minute for what I would say a truly release to happen, but it does feel better than resistance. That's the most beautiful part about the transition from the first part to the second part for me is that, the early meditations, or I should say the early release meditations, a lot of them are about just letting go of resistance before you get to the part of where you're actually confronting. And that's beautiful in its own way. It completely changes your relationship to the symptoms. And that's where I feel like true progress starts to get made. In the first part, you're laying the groundwork and becoming the type of person that can even engage in the work in the first place. But then when you really start to do the meditations where you're creating a little bit more safety and learning to let go of resistance, that's when you can start to actually empty the bucket in a more permanent way and reprocess some of the stuff that's been with you your whole life.
Yeah, well, you're actually saying a lot. Thank you. And I must say, it's also my default state to go back to that stressful person that I once was. Every once in a while, oh, what am I doing, by the way? Now, this is not helpful. When you have a chronic illness, there's a lot of pressure to do it. Otherwise, you won't make it through the day. But when you're healthy, it's easy to go back to that old life.
Yeah. And you have to find for yourself where the line is. Like you've talked in the program about really questioning what amount of exercise is healthy. And it's something I continue to struggle with because I want to feel like there's a sense of vitality that comes from exercise. And I think there's a way to come about it holistically that kind of just is good for you, but I haven't quite found it yet. Every time I try and get back into it, um, I start to get freeze symptoms. Uh, so I really haven't found my way back into it, but I still do believe that there is a way that is good for a human to get activity. I just walk right now, and that's fine. But
Yeah.
when I'm starting to feel good, I'll be like, well, there's got to be some behaviors from the old me that aren't bad. Like work feels good for me in a lot of sense. But then you're like, it's a fine line between the stuff that feels good and the stuff that you're doing for money or views because I'm
Yeah.
a YouTuber. And then you gotta tease them apart, and it takes space to see those things and to have the discernment to come at this with, like I said earlier, like a more skillful will to be like, well, I like my work, but I don't like doing 9 hours of it. And a couple weeks ago, I was sneaking back up to 9 hours a day of work and doing like a cookbook project and developing products and stuff. And all of a sudden I'm like really stressed again. And I'm like, shit. But there's like an amount of work that I love to really put myself into. And you got to be very careful to be like, when you get that, when that feels full, you have to be sensitive to when that feels full and then take a break and be okay with taking a break and being like, the work's going to be there when I'm done or when I come back.
Yeah. I think that's the difference between play and pushing.
Mm.
When I was a child, I was playing football. I loved it. Every day for hours, I was playing football. But then when there was the possibility to become a professional, I got really stressed about it. And then it
Mm.
didn't work anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm definitely not reformed in that way. It's something I really need to work on. And it continuously is maybe this is my third cycle of, I start the program, I'm going to be this low stress guy. And then, I do some releases, I start to feel quite good. And I'm like, maybe I am healed. And then some of the coping comes back in. This is the third time I'm going through that. And I just sort of started rededicating myself to some of the releases 2 weeks ago. Because it kind of falls away. You're like, maybe I don't need to be releasing every single day. But if you work all the time and you're carrying around a lot of stress, maybe you've gotten through some of the wounds and trauma of your past, and you're not in a place where you need to be doing that every single day anymore. Because I've been doing it it's been a year. And so I've been doing emotional processing work for a year. And I would like to think that a lot of the inner child and parts, they feel loved. I feel like I'm a much more integrated person. But yeah, if you're just filling up your stress bucket with work stress and pressure, that's going to create symptoms as well. It's not just the stuff from the past. Or maybe you're making your inner child angry or something, but it just fills the bucket again.
Exactly. So did you experience that doing a release could make you feel symptom free
Yes.
immediately?
It took me yeah, I would say the first few releases were partial releases, and I think that's the case for most people. So you go from having, let's say your symptoms are an 8 or 9 out of 10. You early on, even if you've done some of the journaling and done some of this, let go of resistance and do some safety and stuff like that, you can go from a 8 or 9 to a 6 early, and then 8 or 9 or 10 to a 5 or a 4. And then when you have a full release, and for me, I still don't have full releases all the time. But I can go from a high state of activation to a very, very low state of activation very quickly. If you do the preparation work where you're like, I'm going to feel the thing, make space for it, and then when it's ready, turn that into some kind of release. Yeah. And I would say like maybe half the time I can get to the point where it's just, I feel totally normal afterwards and feel very open.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly for me. I mean, basically, the program is my way of getting my life back and just writing it down and helping other people with it. Finding ways to cry, to make sure that I can walk the dog and make some dinner, go to the grocery store, and have a life. And always coming up with new tools to make sure that I'll feel better. That's basically how it was created.
Yeah. I mean, that's how I've used it as well. I actually heard you say a couple weeks ago in one of your videos, a cry a day keeps the doctor away. And yeah, I've been trying to live that. It's amazing how good you can feel after that. And it doesn't have to be crazy. It can be 10 seconds, you
Yeah.
know?
And then to think that they actually actively taught me in school that boys don't cry.
Yeah,
It's like, why? Do you want us to become chronically ill or what? Do you want us to fail in life?
I know. I know. The more when you open yourself up to the idea that these illnesses are coming from trapped psychic energy or whatever, however you want to say that, psychosomatic, mind, body, you start to see the coping in other people and how pervasive it is. And unfortunately, you see other people really struggling. And if you're not ready for the message, it's going to really create a problem. If you were to go to tell somebody, I think it's psychosomatic or I think it's mind body, if they're not ready for it, it's going to be a very bad
Yeah.
interaction,
And there's a lot of,
unfortunately, because that's how people are conditioned.
yeah. And I want to say like there's a lot of, it's been praised almost, to think that it is a virus or think that there is like mold, and to spend all your money on those types of things. It's more normal than just to try and cry.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's not your problem if it's mold, in a way. You don't have to take as much responsibility. Um, a doctor is your guide. They're the one that's gonna do the thing. They're gonna give you the treatment that will make you better. And yeah, it's very, very difficult to accept that the fact that you would be responsible for healing yourself. It's a long period. I think for me, and I imagine for most people, it's a long transitional period of taking responsibility for it. For me, it was maybe like a 2-week period where I'm like, okay, I'm actually deciding now that this is a thing I'm going to do that's different. But I can see it taking a long time for a lot of people.
Yeah. I mean, it took me years. I basically had to discover this myself, so that wasn't the course for me. But it took me years.
Well, I'm really blessed to have gotten sick during the time of like in the era that I did because um, I could have easily been way, way worse for way, way longer. But there was your information on the internet. And, like the Joe Dispenza stuff genuinely was a good intermediary thing to be in because it was keeping me afloat at least.
Yeah.
You're not seeing the whole picture, but it's giving you something. And, like he hasn't been around forever. If a lot of people were having chronic fatigue in the 90s and 2000s and stuff, and there's just literally nothing out there. And I think some of those people are finding your program now saying that they've been sick for 20 years. And this is just, I think, cutting edge in a lot of ways. It's not it's brand new.
Yeah. And for the people that are sick for a very long time, what I find is that for them, it's really hard to break the cycle of interacting in a fearful way with their symptoms because it's so ingrained that that's who they have become. Like, you said that before you had to let go of the old identity. So that's painful. It's very difficult, I think, to mourn your own ego death. But then you create this other one of being an ill person. And that also
Hmm.
needs to be mourned, which is also very difficult. Because who are you
Yeah,
then if you're not sick?
right. Especially if you've been, thank you, especially if you've been at it for a really long time. Um, I believe that this process, as you've said in some of your videos, is like a spiritual awakening in a sense, in multiple ways, multiple levels. But it does, to get to the point where you're able to do releases, this is a profound amount of psychological and spiritual growth that it takes to go from I am 100% identified with the phenomenon in my body and afraid of them to I feel comfortable with these feelings and I can see them as an object. Because that's what it takes to do the releases in the first place. Is it you can't release something that you're 100% identified with. So just that transition alone forces a type of psychological and spiritual growth that a lot of people. So in that way, it's a beautiful thing that happens to you. That a lot of people can stay in their coping and be this rational mind identified person their entire life, and you can grow within that container, but it sets a ceiling on your expansion. I believe that. And going through this process forces that. It is extremely painful. But once you get to the other side, it's you're a much you have a much wider perspective and your capacity to feel pain and to deal with life and interact with life is much more profound and maybe much more expanded.
I really like that, the way that you're saying that. You're into reading a lot of books right now, right? About spirituality and psychology.
Yeah. I yeah. Maybe that's some of the coping energy as well. But I like to figure it out. I've always been that type of person. And I found a YouTube channel well after the release program because I wanted to learn more about some of the stuff that you talk about, inner child. I wanted to take that a step further. And don't get me wrong, what's in the program is enough for you to do inner child work. I was just like interested, and I don't like feeling like the information has been handed to me. I just wanted to feel like it was my own a little bit more. So I started with reading a few inner child books. that led me to a YouTube channel, this guy named Jordan Thornton, who he's read hundreds of psychology books, and he makes psychology content. And yeah, just kind of, if you're wondering like where to take um this evolution and you want to kind of keep expanding in your life, some of the psychological or spiritual reading is a good place to go, because I don't think it stops. The release is a tool that you'll continue to do, but I think the expansion can continue. Not in like a I need to grow to survive way. It's like I am a spiritual, psychological being that continues to grow up and expand in this lifetime. And so I kind of wanted to, after reading the inner child stuff, well, then there's a new curiosity. So I just been kind of going down that road. And also, I got exposed to the right material. I've read it in before chronic fatigue. I read a lot of pop psychology, self-help type books, but all of them are just positive thinking, kind of a very similar to Joe Dispenza. It's sort of like cognitive behavioral approaches. And I'm not saying that there's nothing there, but that stuff really can only work if some of the lower level somatic pre-rational stuff has been, the childhood traumas and the split off parts from childhood have been healed. Maybe then the cognitive rational layer, which is a higher layer, can be healed. Um, Anyways, I wasn't ever satisfied with that pop psychology stuff. And again, I don't like feeling like I'm just taking somebody else's synthesis. I like to sort of feel like I like to have the wisdom for myself. So hearing Daniel talk about inner child helped me a lot, but I just was curious. I was like, I want to have the knowledge for myself so that I can feel more interpenetrative with the material. Like I can feel like I have a more dynamic understanding. Um, I wouldn't say it's made me that much better at inner child work. Like you can do it from what's in the program. It's a very simple process, but I have really enjoyed learning about it. But the Jordan Thornton channel, he talks about pretty much source material psychology books from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And these are some of the most brilliant, genius thinkers of our time. And this was before, to sell a book on psychology, it had to be packaged in a way that was so lowest common denominator, and like it's going to go on an airport shelf or front and center in a Barnes and Noble. These are books who are written for, serious people who can kind of dive into it's not dumbed down is all I'm saying. Um, and these are geniuses, Abraham Maslow, Carl Jung. And for me, it's just been enjoyable. Not that I think everybody needs to do it, but Ken Wilber is another one. I just really enjoy it personally.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there is only a limit to what I can share, before overwhelming people.
Yeah, I think the program has the right amount of material. Um, I'm sure you'll continue to refine it as time goes on and as you clarify the best way to teach it. But what's there is enough, for sure.
Yeah. And
I'm
and
just like,
just like with your journey of expanding your knowledge, the same counts for healing. Healing is not it doesn't have an end destination. There's always going to be something that is bothering your comfort zone, or that you can heal, or an emotion, or because the more you do, and it's sort of literally, when you have a lot of symptoms, you make your life smaller to the point that you're bedbound and the shower becomes
mhm,
tough. But then, when you expand your comfort zone, you're pretty okay, you're pretty comfortable. But then you you have a company, or you start doing these events, or you start interacting in these types of things. And every time you might notice that there is something there, so that there is something old being triggered maybe, or that there is something that you need to learn. So yeah, healing is not like an end destination. So it's even for the ones who did the program for a year or two, it's still okay to have symptoms. That happens. It's not like
mhm.
you're either sick or healthy. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's an unfolding process that I think is my view is that it's the reason why we're born into this realm, is to expand and experience more of ourselves. Not in a I need more, not from a deficiency standpoint, but from a being standpoint. You know, like I said, you go through the process and you're a wider, more expanded being. And I think what that you know what I'm saying, right? That felt sense. It's like I have capacity in a way that I didn't have before. That doesn't go away. and I feel more expanded, and I feel like I am capable of more love and more empathy. And also too, the release work is what happens when the emotions build up. But there's other types of pathology. For example, why are you getting angry in the first place? Well, I can release the anger when it comes up and gets trapped, but there is work to be done in being like, well, why am I getting so angry? Not that anger is bad, but some of the journaling early in the program helps that. But if you continue it after and make it a occasional routine part of your life to question these things outside of just releasing the anger when it comes up, um, I think that's important as well.
That's a never-ending story, yeah. And maybe part two of the release program.
Yeah. What to do 2 years later, 3 years later, when
Yeah.
you're not completely bedbound.
Valentina's always talking about other programs as a follow-up. She's talking about connecting.
Mm.
It's like after releasing, you're able
I
to
mean,
connect.
listen, if you guys made it, I would do it. I would love that. That'd be amazing.
Well, no, right. We're still working on a German course right now. This is actually going to take a lot of time. You had a relationship during your entire struggle. How did that go?
Well, it went as good as it could have, honestly. I'm very blessed to have a partner who is as compassionate as I did. So I was in married when I got my symptoms, and we had been together 30 or 15 years at that point already. Married for 8 or 9. I'm sorry, I don't know, but sorry, babe. Uh, but yeah, I would not have been able to do what she did. Well, now I would say she's dealing with self-integration in a similar way. Her symptoms never went as far as chronic fatigue, but, she's dealt with some serious mind-body symptoms, gut issues, and some other stuff. She had a difficult childhood, and now I see her going through that. She's been initiated into the healing, whether she had wanted to or not, maybe because of me. So now that I've gone through the program, I can offer that compassion most of the time and be a container to help, feel these difficult things with her. But, I wouldn't have been able to do that before. She had that innate empathy and compassion to be like, not get mad at me when I'm just complaining all the time. I would get mad at somebody like that before. She was very, very caring, was like, whatever you need. And, it's our money that I'm spending on all these treatments. And she was like, whatever you need, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's go to the next doctor. Let's pay for the treatment. And she was extremely supportive. And I just couldn't imagine doing it by yourself or doing it with a partner who is like kind of invalidating your pain. That would be horrible.
Yeah, wow.
So I'm
Yeah.
sorry for anybody out there if that's your experience.
You're very lucky, but you're already for quite a few years. I remember I was just 1 year. You're quite a few years already in your relationship. I was in a relationship that at that time for like 1 year. And like 6 months in, she said, like, I'm sorry, I'm a terrible person. It's like leaving someone with cancer, but bye-bye. And
Yeah,
I think it was for the best as well.
I'm sure because like the amount of stress that it would put on the relationship, even if she stayed around, I mean, it'd be very hard to process that. Create a lot of animosity between both of you. You're not being the person I want you to be. That's both sides would have that problem. But it asks from your partner a nearly infinite compassion because you don't understand, or I imagine Lauren didn't understand what's happening. I don't understand what's happening. And I can't do my job. I can't help around the house. I am not that nice to be around because I'm in so much resistance that I'm just writhing in pain. Just like I can't believe this. Like just complaining all the time. It's horrible to be around.
Yeah. And what you said earlier is that, like we're here to expand. And I think the biggest expansion is that we go from survival mode, always being stressed to just relax our way into life and make sure that we're not stressed with whatever we're doing, whether it is making a YouTube video or having a conversation, going to the supermarket, or anything else, driving the car. How could you actually do it in a relaxed way? And then from
Mm.
that place of relaxation, the mind sort of opens you get more access to the subconscious mind, and maybe as well like inner knowledge and knowing. And I think that will make life much more beautiful, because deep down we still have that memory, I think, of who we really are. To be so extremely relaxed and peaceful and abundant. I think that's
Yeah, well said. It's a continuous process for me to stay there, but Daniel, your mind or your your voice rattles in my mind, um, and I'm like, I just need to be more chill. It seems cliche, but it really is that simple, dude. Like, you can't do any healing work or integration work if you're walking around on 4 cups of coffee from screen to screen all day. It's not possible.
for me that still continues. This is also me telling myself that I need to relax. It's not that you arrive at this guru level and then you're like holy or something like that. I don't even believe in that, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, a part of it too is that you live in a world that, like we keep saying, rewards that. So, um, everything that you consume, whether that's something on your phone or computer or the people you're around, that's the type of consumption as well, or the stuff you look at every day. These are all signals, and they can accelerate you if you're not careful, or at least for me. I try not to be on social media too much, but it's pervasive, it creeps in, and you really have to take extreme steps, or I have lately, to try to not be influenced by it. And you just have to be really careful because the influences creep in, and all of a sudden you're back to grinding. Again, grinding for me now is still very different than it was 3 years ago, but um, yeah, it creeps back in. And, like, I don't even have the capability to grind like I used to because symptoms it's like that my body just will not tolerate that stress level. Symptoms will come back immediately within a day. And there's just activities, like I said, like strenuous exercise, I still can't even do. Like, my system is not chilled enough to the point where I can really do that. And maybe that's a signal that I shouldn't. But I also just think that, the healing process is long, and the capacity to have these sort of peak moments of effort when needed will come back. And I can do it, but it does always lead to some aftermath.
Yeah.
So,
And don't be so hard on yourself. I think it's a year ago that you joined us, right?
yeah, like
Yeah.
almost exactly, yeah.
Yeah. Most people there are not that far in 1 year. They need like 2 years, more or less, to be able at your level, and three years to be able to exercise and live a normal life.
Mm. I think I got lucky that I didn't go down as far on the rabbit hole as some people do. I think if you're in the really advanced stages and you've been bedbound for a long time, I luckily didn't get there. I was bedbound at times and would be spending 4 or 5, 6 hours a day in bed, but I could always do a little something. I was never completely debilitated. Like, I would have to lay down for 2 hours, then I could do 20 minutes of work, 30 minutes of work. Um, or like I could go to, the store, but then I would come home and have to lay down for an hour. But I never lost all capability.
Oh yeah, that's why maybe. So don't be so hard on yourself, and maybe in a year time you really like exercise, but from a healthy place, not from getting a good body, but from joy and play.
Mhm.
I think the best would be if we just meet, just like all of us with chronic fatigue syndrome, or like a little bit better, put two goals and play football. I think that and recreate a happy childhood.
That'd be a lot of fun. That'd be a lot of fun. Like, yeah, and have, like, a barbecue.
Yeah, yeah, and you
That'd be
probably
a good
would
time.
like to really be organizing the barbecue then with the meals and everything. That can be stressful.
Yeah, I love cooking. Well, it can be, but it's also nourishing to make people feel good in that way. If you're not doing it from a seeking approval, but in a I'm trying to be generous and share. Again, the alignment piece gives you so much more energy, so
I'm looking forward to the barbecue, man. Before
hey
we
man, I'll come.
I don't have a land yet. I'm still on the lookout, so there's nothing that I can offer right now for a place. Hey, and is there anything else that before we finish that you would really like to give people like a nice takeaway for the end of the interview?
Yeah, I'd like to say that no matter how much despair you feel, one day you will feel better. And if I could give a tip, it's don't fear pain. It's the greatest teacher, and it's the thing you need to get through it. The more you accept pain as a constant, the better you will do. You're not, the society kind of conditions you to think that, advertising and everything, it's like good vibes all the time. You should be happy all the time. And it's like happiness is not something really you can chase or you should have. It's an emergent feature of non-resistance. And part of being happy for me now includes being able to feel pain fully. I'm a much happier person because I can feel so much more pain with such higher fidelity than I was able to 3 years ago.
It's beautiful. So beautiful. Yeah. And then, eventually you don't really care about happiness anymore. Like, who cares? You just want to take it all in, the good and the bad.
Yeah. Abraham Maslow says this thing that there's really two levels of needs. There's deficiency needs and behaviors and being needs and behaviors. And if you're living from a place of deficiency, I feel like chasing happiness is a deficient action. But when you come at it from a place of being, life has this very low level of pleasure. It's not like a 10 of 10. It's just like 5% pleasurable. When you're living in alignment and your being needs are being met and you're living to being values, there's just like a light pleasure to it. And you're not worried about happiness anymore. I'm not saying I'm there all the time, but I've tasted that and felt it in an embodied sense, and it's stable. It's not this transient thing that's dependent on what I'm doing or what I have achieved. It's part of my being.
Wow. That's a beautiful way to end the interview. Thank you so much, Brian. I'll put the links to your YouTube channel and maybe your book as well in it. And since I'm a very bad cook, I'll probably buy the book to see if you got some good, easy tips for me.
Cool. Well, thanks, Daniel. Thank you for making the program. Truly saved my life. It's really great to have been able to stay connected to you afterwards.
Yeah. Likewise. Thank you, man.
Thanks.
Thank you for watching the complete video. What are the key takeaways for you from this video? And if you have enjoyed it, please like and subscribe. And I wish you a beautiful healing journey.